At 3:14 a.m., my phone lit up with a security alert from our mountain cabin, a place my wife swore she hadn't visited in 6 months. I opened the camera feed expecting a bear or a burglar. Instead, I saw Vanessa in the kitchen, in a silk robe I'd never seen, laughing as she poured bourbon for a man I knew. He sat across from me at the Rotary Club every Thursday. That night, I pretended I hadn't seen a thing. In 3 weeks, I'd take everything he owned. My name is Nathan Cole. I'm 44 years old, and for the last 17 years I've run a small architectural firm out of a converted carriage house in Savannah, Georgia. I specialize in historic restoration, the slow, patient work of saving 200-year-old buildings from developers who'd rather tear them down and put up something shinier. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. I married Vanessa 12 years ago on a beach at Tybee Island. She was a realtor then, just starting out, and I remember how her hand trembled when I slid the ring on her finger. "I'll never let you down," she whispered. 12 years later, those words would sound like a prepared statement. We didn't have children. We had a 1920s Craftsman on Jones Street that we'd restored ourselves, a golden retriever named Cooper, and a cabin up in the Blue Ridge Mountains we'd bought 5 years back as a weekend escape. Vanessa had climbed the ranks at Harbor Crest Realty to become their top producing agent. I was proud of her. I told her so every day. It turned out she was very good at selling things, especially lies. The man in our kitchen that night was Gavin Ashworth, 50 years old, married 23 years, CEO of Ashworth Development. His firm was in the middle of the largest condominium project Savannah had seen in a decade, a 12-story tower on the site of the old Weatherby Cotton Warehouse. And here's the thing. I sat on the Savannah Historic Preservation Board that had approved the permits for that very project. Looking back, the signs had been there for months. I just hadn't wanted to see them. It started with the phone. Vanessa had always left hers face up on the kitchen counter. Around May, she began carrying it with her, to the bathroom, to the porch, into the garden while she pretended to prune the azaleas. When I asked, she laughed. "Clients, honey, you know how they are. I can't miss a call." You used to miss plenty of calls. Well, I used to not be top of the board. The second thing was the perfume. For 12 years, Vanessa had worn the same soft citrus scent. One Tuesday in June, she came home from a closing smelling like something dark and spicy. Oud, maybe. Man's cologne underneath it. New scent? A client gave it to me. Tell me it's not awful. It's not awful. Just not you. The third thing was subtler. For 2 years, whenever Gavin Ashworth's name came up at a charity event or in the paper, she'd roll her eyes. "Arrogant prick," she'd say. Then around March, she stopped saying anything about him at all. When I mentioned his name one night at dinner, she looked down at her plate and took a very long sip of wine. I don't really have an opinion on him. Strange, I thought, but I pushed it down. That's what you do when you've been married 12 years. You push things down. Then came the night she came home at 11:40 p.m. from what she called a late showing, a waterfront condo on River Street. I knew the building. I'd restored the lobby myself 4 years earlier. She told me the buyer was a retired surgeon from Charleston. When I looked up the property the next morning, the listing had been pulled 2 weeks prior. No showing, no retired surgeon. I almost asked her about it. I didn't. I don't know why. Maybe because I still believed in the woman who trembled on that beach. The night of the cabin feed was a Thursday. She told me she was driving to Atlanta for a 2-day realtor conference at the Ritz. She'd even shown me the itinerary on her laptop. I kissed her forehead before she left, the way I always did, and said, "Drive safe." At 3:14 a.m., my phone vibrated on the nightstand. Cooper lifted his head. The alert read, "Motion detected. Cabin kitchen." The cameras at the cabin were something I'd installed myself 2 years back, after a break-in scare down the road. 4 interior, 2 exterior. I opened the app expecting raccoons. What I got was Vanessa, barefoot on the hardwood, laughing at something Gavin had just said. She was wearing a silk robe the color of champagne. He was in a white undershirt and boxers. There was a bottle of Blanton's on the counter, 2 glasses, a half-eaten wedge of brie. They looked comfortable. They looked like people who had done this 100 times before. I don't remember getting out of bed. I don't remember walking downstairs. I just remember standing in my kitchen, staring at a cast-iron pan on the stove, and feeling every assumption I'd made about my life drain out of my body like water out of a cracked glass. I could have driven up there that night, 3 hours north, kicked in the door, ended 12 years with a shout and a fist. I didn't. I sat down at the kitchen table. Cooper put his chin on my knee. I poured myself a finger of bourbon from the bottle I'd bought Vanessa for our 10th anniversary, and I watched the cabin feed for 90 minutes. I watched them eat. I watched them touch. I watched her laugh at things he said the way she used to laugh at things I said. And somewhere in those 90 minutes, I stopped being Nathan Cole, the husband. I became something else. Something patient. Something that understood that the real answer wasn't a shout. The real answer was a file cabinet. Because Gavin Ashworth's Weatherby warehouse project was on my board's docket. I'd seen the architectural submissions. I had access to the permits, and something in me, the professional, the restoration specialist, the man who could read a blueprint like a psalm, remembered something about those drawings that hadn't been right. The next morning, I made coffee. Vanessa called at 8:02 a.m. "Miss you, honey. The keynote was so boring I almost fell asleep." "What are you up to?" "Just got back from a run with Cooper. Deciding between waffles and the gym." "Go with the waffles. You deserve it." "Hey, Van. Are you coming home tonight or tomorrow?" "Tomorrow afternoon. They've got me on a panel at 4. "Okay. Drive safe." I hung up. I walked into my home office and opened the encrypted drive where I kept project files. I pulled up the Ashworth submission for the Weatherby Cotton Warehouse. I went through every page. On page 47, I found it. The revised structural plan showed the east facade, the 1847 original brick wall, marked for full preservation. But the demolition schedule attached as an appendix, which nobody on the board would normally cross-reference, listed that same facade as Phase 2 removal, historic recoverable cladding. Gavin planned to tear it down, salvage the bricks, and use them as decorative veneer. Completely illegal under our preservation ordinance, worth a fine of up to $2 million and permanent disbarment from city projects. But the real kicker was how it had been approved. The appendix had been filed 72 hours after the main submission. Nobody on the board had ever seen it. Somebody inside the permitting office had let it slide. Somebody, I realized, who was sleeping with my wife's boyfriend. I called an old fraternity brother of mine named Reggie Ellison. Reggie was a partner at a white shoe firm in Atlanta and one of the meanest divorce attorneys in the Southeast. "Reggie, I need you to sit down." "I'm sitting." I told him everything. "Nathan," he said after a long silence, "listen to me very carefully. Do not confront her. Do not say one word out of rhythm. Give me 72 hours. "Okay. I'm putting a forensic accountant on your finances today. I want every joint account photographed before she has a chance to move a dime. Open a solo checking account at Bank of Savannah today. Put 4 months of expenses in cash." "Okay. And Nathan, that cabin footage, back it up. 3 places. Cloud, external drive, and a printed still in a safe deposit box. If she deletes it, you're cooked." That afternoon, I also called a friend named Dina Park, a forensic architect who consulted for the state on preservation fraud cases. I didn't tell her what I had. I just asked her to quietly review the Weatherby submission. When Vanessa came home the next evening, she was tan, tired, and carrying a conference tote bag full of brochures she'd obviously grabbed from the Ritz lobby. She kissed me on the cheek. She smelled like oud and bourbon and somebody else's bed. "How was it?" "Exhausting. Good, but exhausting." "Waffles?" "I had them," I lied. "Thought about you." She smiled. "I missed you, Nate." "I missed you too." And that's how it went for 19 days. I cooked her favorite dishes. I put fresh flowers on her nightstand. I let her believe the marriage was whole while I copied every file, every tax return, every property deed. While Reggie's accountant shadowed our finances. While Dina Park confirmed in writing that the east facade demolition represented a Class 2 felony violation. Twice, Vanessa almost caught me. Once I left a Bank of Savannah statement on the kitchen counter. She picked it up. "What's this?" "Refinancing question. Rates are moving. I'm just shopping." "Without telling me?" "I'll tell you if it's worth it." She stared at me for 3 full seconds. Then she set the statement down. "Okay, baby." The other time she caught me at my desk at 11 p.m. scrolling through cabin footage. What are you looking at? Raccoons. I tilted the screen toward a clip I'd cued from the week before. Camera picked up a whole family on the porch. Look at the little one. She laughed. Poor things. She kissed my head. Come to bed. That night I lay next to her and listened to her breathing and thought about how much a person can hold inside a body without splitting open. The Savannah Historic Preservation Board met the second Wednesday of every month at the old City Hall on Bay Street. Public. Televised on local access. Attended by reporters from the morning news and a rotating crew of neighborhood watchdogs. I made sure, through a series of small, carefully arranged phone calls, that Vanessa and Gavin would both be there. Gavin was already scheduled. His firm was presenting an update on the Weatherby timeline. Vanessa I invited myself 2 nights before, at dinner. Baby, I could use you there Wednesday. They're honoring the Jones Street restoration. I'd like you next to me when they announce it. Her eyes lit up. Vanessa loved a spotlight. Of course. I'll wear the green dress. She wore the green dress. Gavin wore a navy blazer and a smile like he owned the room. His wife, Marisol, sat 2 rows back with their teenage daughter. The gallery was packed. 120 people. 2 reporters, 3 camera operators from Channel 3. When the chair called Gavin to the podium, he stood, buttoned his blazer, and began his presentation with a story about his grandfather and honoring the bones of this city. I let him finish. I let him take applause. Then the chair said, "Any questions or comments from the board?" I raised my hand. "Madam Chair, I'd like to present supplementary materials relating to Item 3. Proceed, Mr. Cole." I stood. I did not look at Vanessa. I walked to the podium, opened my laptop, and projected page 47 of the Weatherby submission onto the wall behind me. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're looking at is the revised structural plan submitted by Ashworth Development. On its face, it preserves the 1847 east facade, as required by Ordinance 14B. I clicked. A second page appeared. This is the demolition appendix. Filed 72 hours after the main submission. Never reviewed by this board. It calls for the east facade to be demolished and its bricks repurposed as decorative veneer, which, as every person in this room knows, is a Class 2 felony under Georgia preservation law. The room went still. Gavin's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. That's a clerical error. That appendix was never meant. It bears your signature, Mr. Ashworth. It bears the notarized stamp of your project manager. It was filed. It was entered into the permitting record. And it was approved without a vote of this board. I clicked a third time. A forensic report appeared, with Dina Park's letterhead. Independent verification, commissioned by me personally, confirms fraud upon this board. Marisol Ashworth had gone very pale. Vanessa, in the second row, was holding her clutch so tightly her knuckles had turned white. The chair leaned forward. Mr. Cole, have you submitted this to the city attorney? Yesterday afternoon, along with the forensic report, and one other document. I clicked a final time. A stack of text messages appeared on the wall, dated, time-stamped, recovered by Reggie's forensic team from a shared iCloud account neither Vanessa nor Gavin had bothered to secure. These are communications between Mr. Ashworth and a private real estate agent in Savannah, beginning 8 months ago, in which Preservation Board discussion points, internal to this body, were shared in advance of votes. The agent used her position to alert Mr. Ashworth to how the board would likely rule on specific parcels, giving his firm enormous competitive advantage in land acquisition. I turned finally for the first time toward the second row. The agent is my wife, Vanessa Cole. A murmur ran through the gallery like wind through grass. Vanessa stood up. She sat back down. She tried to stand again. Marisol Ashworth was already walking out of the room, her daughter clutched to her side, not looking back. Gavin said, Nathan, buddy, this is a misunderstanding." "I was never your buddy," I said quietly, into the microphone, to 120 people. "I was just the man whose wife you borrowed." The gavel came down. "This board will recess pending referral to the district attorney. Mr. Ashworth, Ms. Cole, do not leave the state." The district attorney filed charges against Gavin Ashworth 6 days later. Felony preservation fraud, conspiracy, and, once the forensic accounting caught up, a securities violation tied to how he'd represented the Weatherby project to his investors. His company's stock dropped 41% in 2 weeks. Marisol filed for divorce and was awarded the house in Ardsley Park, the beach place on Sea Island, and primary custody. Gavin's last known address was a short-term rental in Tampa. Vanessa was not charged criminally. Reggie negotiated that carefully, but Harbor Crest Realty terminated her contract within 48 hours. Her license was suspended by the Georgia Real Estate Commission. She moved into her mother's condo in Pooler. She tried to call me for weeks. I didn't answer. The divorce was clean. Reggie made sure of it. I kept the Jones Street house, the firm, Cooper, and the cabin. Vanessa walked away with her car, her clothes, and 40% of a joint savings account I'd already quietly thinned. Here's what I learned. When somebody you love decides to become your enemy, they do it slowly, in silence, and they count on your kindness as their cover. The mistake they always make is assuming a patient man is a weak one. Patience is just a long knife. You only feel it after it's already in. What would you have done? Let me know in the comments.